Today I'm talking about expanding search criteria and what it looks like from the beginning of looking for a house to maybe what you might end up finding at the end of it. So there's a few things I want to talk about with search criteria. When you come to me initially, there are generally some things that you have in your head that you want to stay some confines of the search criteria for a house that you want to stay in. Let's say that you want it to be at least 2,000 square feet. You want to have at least 4 bedrooms. You want to have at least 2 baths. You want one of those baths to have a bathtub because you have little kids and you want to make sure that they're getting a bath at night, not a shower. Maybe the kitchen needs to have gas. You really love a gas stove top. There's all these search criteria that you have when you start. One of those would be where you want to live, what neighborhood you want to live in, what city that you want to live in, what school district you want to have your kids go to. All of these things are all criteria for looking for a home. What starts to happen is that when people get discouraged because they haven't found that one house in that one area that's this big, that's, whatever, they'll just start kind of looking at everything and saying, well, I can deal with this, I can deal with that, and there comes a certain point when if your search criteria for that area are just a little bit too narrow, where you're not finding very many that fit that particular type of criteria, then it's probably going to be time for us to talk about changing that criteria just a little bit. Now, I know areas very, very well. I've been doing real estate for 5 years. I've shown houses all over the place. However, I can kind of guide you in the right direction for, let's say that you want a new build. You want something that's going to be built and you want it to be on the north side of Grand Prairie. Well, there's no place for a home really to be built on the north side of Grand Prairie. And if there is, they're very limited. So I can tell you right away, you're not going to find that. We need to figure out another place where you can build. Or do you want to talk about maybe getting a pre-existing home in that area that's a little bit newer and not so old? We can talk about that. And there's things that I know for sure are going to be there and are not going to be there. However, the market is what the market is at that time, and what is available on inventory is going to be different in January as opposed to July, or last year compared to this year, or there's going to be those differences where maybe in January I found a lot of houses that had gas in this particular neighborhood, and they all had gas and they all had stovetops, and I found a bazillion. This year, or in September, there's just not as many. For whatever reason, the people that are putting them on the market, they're all electric. So just because, I know the area doesn't always mean that I know exactly what kind of houses are going to be on that market and who's going to actually be selling at that time. So it becomes important to start with the specific things that you really, really want, and let's expand it as we go out, as opposed to let's just look at every single thing in the world and then kind of start from within. So when you do expand your search criteria, here are some things that we could start discussing that would be worth it for you to change. Number one, if you have decided that there is a certain city or maybe 2 cities that you are willing to live in because you have a job that's close by, you want the kids to go to that school district, whatever, it's really important that if you're going to look outside of that city limits, that we understand why, and if it's really going to be something that is going to be happy for you to live there long term, or if you're just changing that city just because you can't find anything right this second. So before you start changing cities, before you start changing all that, we just need to have a conversation that makes sure you understand, are you okay with there being a 30-minute commute? Are you okay with there being a longer commute? Those kind of conversations we can have. The other thing to consider is actually making sure that before you change any search criteria, before you start looking on the internet and you just don't find anything. Let's say that you start looking on Zillow or Redfin or whatever, and you've been looking on there for a ton of time, and you've seen these houses and you kind of see what the pictures look like, and there's just nothing that you've seen that you like. Well, before we start changing search criteria, we want to make sure that we're actually going to see the houses in person, because let me tell you, there could be a tremendous difference between what you see on the internet and what you actually see when you go in. So let's say, for example, that you want at least 2,000 square feet because you need a house with a lot of space. You found one that you really liked that's 1,850 square feet. Nope, it's too small. Well, before you start to, if you really like the house, it's in the right area, it's the right price, but it's a little bit smaller than you were hoping for, it never hurts to go look at that house to see how that house is laid out. Maybe that 1,850 square feet is actually utilized much better than the one that's down the street that's 2,200 square feet and feels more closed off and not as open. Going and actually looking at houses is going to be very important because you don't know what that house is going to feel like or look like until you get there. So if there's been a lot of home searches that you've done and you just can't seem to find pictures that you like, we need to start talking about just going and looking and taking a chance and actually going and looking. The third thing that you want to consider is every place that you live is going to have different tax rates. It's going to have HOAs. It's going to have a different insurance rate. Those are all things that are going to affect your monthly down payment. So if you have been pre-approved based on going into a house that is in Grand Prairie, where maybe or let's use a different example. Let's use Flower Mound. Flower Mound is actually has one of the lowest tax rates in DFW. So let's say that you wanted to go look for there and the tax rate is 2%, which means that your taxes are going to be appraised at 2% of the value of your home. So let's say that the 2% of the value of your home in Flower Mound is $5,000. So your annual taxes are $5,000. You're going to be paying those off every month. So $500 divided by 12 would be 40, what is it? Or $5,000 divided by 12 is going to be what, like $400 a month, $480 a month, doing fast math. But let's say that that same home with the same appraised value, you find in Grand Prairie that has a tax rate of 2.93%, that is appraising your value at 2.93%. That amount is going to be much higher than the $5,000 and it's going to affect your monthly payment. That's one of the reasons why we want to make sure we get you pre-approved so that you know exactly how much you want to pay, because one city to the next could mean a difference of a couple $100s a month or even more. The other thing too is the HOA. Let's talk about how we can, do you want an HOA? Do you not want an HOA? All those things go into the price points and go into the monthly payment. So before you start messing your search criteria up, let's have a conversation about it and kind of see why you're wanting to change what you originally liked and what you originally needed in a house so that we can kind of move forward in a better way. The other thing I don't want you to do is start reacting out of desperation. I've had clients before where it's like, well, I only want to live in Arlington, and then 3 weeks into the process, I start getting houses from McKinney and Burleson and Garland and Midlothian, and I'm like, wait a second. We're talking all over DFW Metroplex, and it's because out of desperation, they're like, I just need to find a house. Well, none of those houses are really gonna be where you wanna stay. So going and looking at those houses we know are probably not gonna be yeah, we could find them and you could find a house that you like, but is it really gonna be where you wanna live? So those are all reasons why we wanna talk about it as we go. So definitely keep me in the loop. If there's anything that you wanna change about your search criteria, especially the houses that you're receiving via email from me, let me know and talk about it. Also, you can check out the video for the portal training video that I sent you a few days ago. You can change the search criteria yourself using that tutorial, and we can certainly talk about that as we go. But we're a team, we're on the same page. Just wanted to give you a little bit of information about that. Happy house hunting!